All right, welcome back to a new TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one, we are going to look at collages. I'm not entirely sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and the Google translation woman that pronounced it also sounded really weird, so I'm just going to say collages. Well, anyways, that's what we're going to look at today. So basically, we're going to create something like what you can see here in the background. So what we're doing essentially is just grabbing a bunch of images from a folder, and we're doing some texture instancing and some very simple compositing to create these sort of cutout shapes. I'm going to show you in a second, and then we're just like putting them onto each other really. So that's sort of the idea here. So what this is all based on is chops and some noise. So we can just mess around with the parameters and create these different sort of setups here. And as we have some instancing going on, we can create different rotations, different scalings, and all these kind of things. I guess you're quite familiar with now. And yeah, the heart of this is really in this base. So if we go in here, what we have going on is a DAT structure, which is just grabbing all the paths from the different images. We have a replicator, which is just replicating a bunch of bases again. And in these bases, we have a movie file in that is just grabbing the image. And then we have some compositing going on here with a displaced circle to create this abstract sort of shape here, or this deformed shape. And then we're doing just some like edge magic here to create this sort of paper cut look. And we can also get rid of the shadow and things like that. So yeah, so we have a different like replicant for each of these images. And then we're just rendering that out onto a rectangle. And yeah, at the end we're adding some grid lines here in the background, so it's not just black, but you can obviously just have it black too. All right, so let's get started and just make this from scratch together. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete everything, and I'll start with a little render setup here. So I'm gonna add a rectangle, and to this rectangle I'm gonna add a transform, and from the transform I'm going to create a geo. It's going to go ahead and turn instancing on here, and I'm going to create a camera. On my camera I'm going to go to view and change this to orthographic and change the ortho width to like 4. Then I'm going to add a render top. I also want to have a constant material actually. Just going to grab this on here, say par material. And on the render I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to add a null and call it BG as usual. So we just have this one rectangle shown there. So much to the render network. And now I'm just gonna add like the simple instancing to just like randomly position these rectangles, and we're gonna come back to the instancing later on. But for now we're just gonna look at the positioning. So I'm gonna create a noise. And for now on my channel, I'm just going to go ahead and change this to samples. And I'm just going to use like a sample value, basically like 10, but we're going to change that later on. And on my noise, I actually want this to be random. So I'm going to change the type to random. And I'm going to change my channel names here to TX and TY. So we're just creating 2 different channels. And then I'm going to use a select here. Actually, I also want to go to my noise and change the offset and amplitude both to 0.5. So we're in a range between 0 and 1. So I'm going to use a select and a math and a merge. I'm just going to copy both of these and put that in here. On the first one, I'm just going to select TX, and on the second one, TY. All right. So on my math here, I want to change the range to -2 and 2. And on the second one, I want to change it to like -1.5 and 1.5. Well, that's not a point, that's a comma. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to add a null to this and just call it pause. I'm going to go to my geo, already turned instancing on. I can just drag my pause onto here, select TX for TX and TY for TY. And now we can see if I go ahead and change my seed, we're just randomly putting these rectangles on the screen. Cool. So we're going to come back to this. I'm going to go ahead and create a base now. And we're going to look at the folders and the textures. So I'm just going to call this base textures. And by pressing C, I'm going to give it like color. And we're going to go in here. Right, let's start with a folder DAT. And on my folder, like now it's just grabbing the folder that I'm in. I'm just going to click on this plus and just select a folder that I want to use. And in this folder, there's really just images in there, and that's kind of important. So I'd suggest you just create a new folder, whatever it's called. It doesn't matter where it is. You just locate it here. And in there, you just want to put all the pictures that you want to use for this. You just drag them all in there. All right, so you just have all these paths here. We can just go to columns and turn name off. We don't need that. We just need the paths. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a select here because we don't need the header. So I'm just going to select by index and just put a 1 here. So we're just getting rid of that first line. I'm going to add a sort, and we're going to come back to this. And I'm going to add a null and just call this files. Right. So I'm going to add a replicator here, replicator comp. And I'm going to use my files here as a template DAT table. I'm going to create a base and call it text0, texture 0. And I'm going to use this as the master operator for my replicator. And just going to change the operator prefix to text2. So they're all called text and then a number. Right. So let's go ahead and change the operator viewer here to text, like /text. I'm going to see why soon. I'm going to add a keyboard in chop here. Just as we do with feedback loops, I want to be able to just recreate all of these operators just by pressing 1 on my keyboard. Right, so we already have like all of our textures now set up, and now it's the number, like the number of text, the number of replicants in total now is the same as the number of images we have in our folder automatically. So if you add a new file or if you delete a file in your folder, it's just gonna automatically update, or you just might have to press like 1 here. All right, so let's go into our master. We don't need to work in any of these. We can just work in our master. And I'm gonna add a movie file in because we wanna be grabbing some images, right? That's what it's all about. So instead of this expression here, I'm going to type in op .. So we're going like 1 step back, then files. And then we want to be grabbing the row of our of this number, so of our parent. So parent parentheses dot digits, and then 0, and then another one of these. I don't know what they're called, heart brackets, something like that. All right, so now we're grabbing that, and if I press 1 now, you can see if we go in here, you're gonna see a different image for it, all of these. That's because we have this expression in here, parent digits, and that's grabbing this very digit here. So it's a different one for all of these. So we're going through all of these rows and just using all of these paths for our movie file in. Right, let's keep on going. Let's add a fit here. And just change the, I don't know, the resolution, I guess, could be something like maybe 700 by 700. Doesn't have to be too big. And we can go and change our fit to fit outside, just so we're filling in the whole screen. Right, then let's add a circle from here. And the reason we're doing that is simply to grab the correct resolution. And we're going to do the same thing with a noise here. Just grab the resolution again. Let's go to output, change this to just noise, the RGB. And let's turn monochrome off. And let's go ahead and by middle mouse clicking, adding a displace here. Let's add our noise into the second input. And on our displace, I want to go down with the displace weight to like 0.1. Now you can see we already have this cool shape going on here. So on my noise, I just want to go up with my period to 1, harmonics to 1, period to 2, harmonics to 1, and harmonic gain to like 0.5. And then we, if we change the seed here, you can see it just creates all these cool different shapes. they're not that cool, but they're shapes. And again, we want to just, want to have a different shape for every iteration, for every texture. So let's just use the same expression and just write parent parentheses .digits. So with every texture now, if I just press 1 on my keyboard and go in here, you're going to see it's going to be a different shape here for all of these. Cool, so let's add a composite and just put that in here. And now we're just basically cutting out this image with that shape. Very straightforward. And let's now create the little, let's actually do that later. Let's just focus on the more systematic part for now, not the artsy part. So I'm gonna add a null. I'm gonna call this text. And now you should see this already happening because we've defined ./text here. If I press 1, you're now going to see it's always going to take a bit to load, but like every time you press 1, now you can see we have a different cutout, like a different shape of every image in our folder going on here. So cool. And it's quite important that our background behind this is alpha, like has zero alpha basically. It's transparent, in other words. Okay, so let's get going and grab these textures. So we're actually displaying them. We don't just have them in the folder here. So from my noise here, I'm going to create a pattern. And actually now, before we move on, what I want to do now here, first we just define like the amount of samples to 11 actually, because 0 to 10 is 11. What we want to do is we want to go ahead and just type a little expression here, because we want to always have the amount of instances, the amount of samples that we have here should always be equal to the amount of images that we have in our folder. So this is 21. So we could of course type that manually, but we can also do that dynamically. And so we can just type in OP textures. So this folder here, /files, so our null that I just showed you, and then .num rows, and we just got to subtract 1. All right, so now you can see we have 21 samples here. It's grabbing that from here, from this very null. And now we always have the correct amount of instances. So let's get back to our pattern, change this to a ramp. Let's change the channel name here to index. And what we also want to do is use the same expression here on the to range, because we want to grab like every, we have all these numbers here basically 0, 1, 2, 3, and they're going up to 20. So we've got to do the same thing here. We've got to first add 20 samples, which we're basically just doing by using this expression here. And then we're going to do the same thing here. So we're just going from 0 to 20 upwards. Right, so I'm going to add a null to this and just call it index. And on my geo, let's just get rid of this. On my geo, I'm going to go to my instance2 page. You can't see that well now because of the interaction display there. And what I want to do now is just use my index here as a texture index OP. I want to use index as my channel, so this channel name. And then instant textures, now we want to use textures, then whatever texture we have here, so text 0, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, and then the texture here at the end, so text. So let's just write that in there. Textures, text, and then asterisk, and then again text. And now you should be seeing this sort of thing. Doesn't really look that great yet. We have to turn blending on our material. It's quite important, otherwise it's just going to cut off parts. So that's why we have alpha in our textures, so we can do this blending thing. Cool, so that's already looking really good. And basically we have the main part going on. So before we style this a bit more, let's have a look at the at some more instancing possibilities here. So first off, I'm going to add another noise, and I'm just going to go ahead and call this road. I'm going to add a math to it. Actually, yeah, let me just copy this noise because it's already sort of set up the right way. Let's call it road. And on my math, I'm going to change the range to 360, so we have full rotation. I'm going to add a null, just call this rotation. I'm just going to copy this whole thing, call it scale. Let's use a different seed on this one and a different seed on this one. And for the scale, I'm just going to go with like 0.7 and like 3. Let's just see. And I'm going to call this null scale. It's displaying an error here, but it doesn't really matter. Like basically, it's for the other like for the random, it doesn't, it can't grab like the position values here basically. So if you're working with another type of noise, then you can actually use the values that come in here. But with random, that doesn't work. But we're still putting that in here because we just want to use the samples basically. So yeah, I don't think you can get rid of that error for now, but you know, it doesn't really matter. Just ignore that. If it bugs you too much, you can still not pipe this in here and just change this channel thing. I mean, technically we can just do it like this. It really just works the same because we have the expression already set up here. Well, yeah, let's just keep it that way. Let's go to our geo. To instance one page, and let's use rotation here, and let's just rotate z rot. Same with scale, and then just use scale on x and y. Now if I change the seed, you can see how the scale is being affected by that. Cool. So and now we can go to our first noise and also change the seed here, and that's going to change the way this is there being ordered or like displayed. Nice. One thing I might want to do here, let's go into our textures again, and let's actually right click and customize this component. Let's go in here, go to sort, and just change the order here to random. It's gonna always load a bit. I want to save this. And you can just grab the seed, put it on here, and say set reference expression on source. And now I wouldn't like mess around with this too much, but just type in different values like 0.6, and then it's gonna recalculate and just change the order in which it's grabbing the images from the folder. So I think that's a nice way to change this around to make it even more generative. All right, so let's add this paper sort of ripping effect to the parts. It's looking very seriously at me. Right, so let's again use let's go into our master, so text 0, and what we want to do here now, just, 1 second. I want to create first want to add a blur, and let's just change the filter size to like 5, so a very slight blurring. And then let's add an edge. On this edge, I want to change the strength to 2 and the sample step to like 1.5, just to just make it a bit wider. Then I'm going to add a displace. And from my edge with the middle mouse, I'm going to add a noise. And on my noise, I'm just going to go down with the period to like 0.1. And turn monochrome off. Then I'm going to go ahead and put this into my displace, the second input. On my displace, I want to go down with the displace weight quite extremely, so like 0.003. Found as a nice value. Now you can already see this sort of ripping effect. It kind of looks weird right now because we have to also go to output and just change this to noise. And now we can see this sort of, yeah, ripped paper look. What we also want to do here on our noise is, again, we can just go to our first noise, just copy this expression, and also put that in here, so we have a different sort of ripping effect on every part. So let's just go ahead and use like a composite here. Put that in here. Put that over here and like put this input over the other one and change this to over. And now we have our ripped paper there. So if I press 1 now, we should see that ripping going on every part. Cool. So let's just add a bit of shadow. It's like one last little touch that kind of makes the whole thing a bit more interesting. So for my blur here, I'm going to add another edge. I'm going to change the, well, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this one because we just want to have the same values. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this parameter and pass the bind here. So if we do change one of them, they're still the same, like the same as the other. And I'm going to add a blur to this edge. And also on this edge, I actually want to change the comp over input. That's why we're creating another edge. On my blur here, I'm going to change this to like 25, 24 actually, it's my favorite number. Then I'm going to add another edge. I'm going to make this one black. And I'm going to change the strength to like 0.4, so it's just a bit less. And then I'm going to add another comp here before the comp up there. Put this one in here. And let's just again change this to over. And now you can see if we just display it on the background, we have some shadow going on. I mean, it's not perfect because it's also like showing on this. Actually, what I might want to do is not put that here, but put that here. Whoops, here, after that one. Yeah, now it's much better. Yes, all right. So and you can like change the amount of like blurring, the basically how far you're like, how far the offset of the of the shadow. You can change that with the blurring here, and with the edge strength you can basically just say how strong it is. So 0.3 maybe is good. So again, I'm going to press 1. It's going to recreate all of them, and now we have some subtle shadowing going on all of them. All right, last but not least, let's have a look at some post-processing just to round this off nicely. So there is this, I've shown this in another video. There is this zip, or like this resource online on the GitHub by David Braun, which is just just a folder with a lot of different pre-made toxes. So you have all these different things. So let's just go to tops here. So I'm gonna put the link in the description and you can just download that, and then just go to tops, and then we have this grid lines just to make things easy. Put that in here. So you just have a grid basically already sort of pre-made for you. Let's change our resolution to let's just go ahead and copy this. Let's just copy the first one, paste the reference here, and same with the second one. All right, and now we can maybe add some line spacing, make it grid a bit bigger, and let's change the line color to like a sort of this gray, and the background color to lighter gray, something like this. We can see. Let's add a comp. And just put this into here and change this to over. And now we can see we sort of have this background going on. Let's actually go down with the scale. Something like 14 seems good. Cool. And at the very end, we can add a noise. Just change this to random. Let's go down with the amplitude and the offset, and also maybe go down with the noise scale. So just very, very slight grain that we're adding. Just makes everything look a bit more interesting. Cool. It just says no down here. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, there's a lot of room as usual to mess around with things. So first off, of course, as I showed before, you can just mess around with these seeds. You can change the scaling here, so you could go up with the scaling, so it's just much bigger, the parts. You can go down with it as well. And yeah, it just looks kind of weird though. Right, you can, yeah, you can't really, no, I don't have many more ideas what you can do here, but I think the main part what you can do is, of course, change the textures and the way the cutouts are working. So this is really just one example, but feel free to completely mess around with this. Maybe, I don't know, use a rectangle instead or whatever, you know. You don't have to use the cutout like the paper look, even though I think it looks very cool. Very proud of that. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do here to just, you know, style your cutouts, and that's, I think, the heart of this. And yeah, the amount of cutouts you have just is based on the the amount of images you have in your folder. And of course you can do some post-processing and all these kind of things. So feel free to experiment, as always. Right, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you want to support me, or if you just want to have some more content, you can check out my Patreon, link is in the description. And thanks so much for everybody who's supporting me, and thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.